Snow had always been a quiet visitor in the outskirts of Eastern Europe, gentle flakes drifting from the sky, creating silver dreams on rooftops and fields. But this winter, the snow no longer felt like a soft lullaby. It stung like shards of ice against the skin, and the wind carried a cry that seemed to come from the land itself, wounded, frightened, exhausted. The year was reaching its coldest breath. War had carved trenches into farmlands, devoured forests, and turned cities into graves of brick and bone. People prayed for spring, yet spring felt like a story from another world. The days were short and dim, the nights endless and hungry. In a narrow trench lined with frozen mud and brittle sandbags, Corporal Elias Novak slid stiff fingers into holes of his wool gloves, trying to bring life into them again. Every breath he exhaled turned into a ghostly cloud before his face. "Still alive down there, Novak?" a voice called from above, teasing despite the cold. Elias looked up to see Silas Carter, the troublesome marksman from London whose humor refused to die even as artillery rained around them day after day. "Barely," Elias muttered, forcing a smile. "Another hour out here and I'll turn into one of the ice statues in the cathedral back home." Silas jumped into the trench, boots striking the compacted snow. "At least you'll be a work of art," he grinned, brushing frost from his shoulders. Elias shook his head slowly. He admired Silas's ability to laugh, but he himself felt carved from stone now, no emotions, just duty and survival. The war had drained color from his memories, leaving only muted shades of fear and responsibility. Above them, the pale morning light crawled through a sky thick with clouds like bruises. The front line was quiet for now, dangerously quiet. Far from the trenches, in the small village of Branover, life was equally harsh, just a different battlefield. Homes were patched with scavenged wood, windows sealed with cloth to keep out the ruthless wind. Food supplies were thinning. Winter ration lines stretched past the main square every morning. Inside a humble baker's home, Amara Vakova pulled a thin blanket tighter around her younger brother, Miran, who shivered even near the dying fire. "It's okay," she whispered, though she wasn't sure. "I'll find something more for us to eat tomorrow." Miran nodded, trying to be brave. His eyes, green like spring grass, looked too hopeful for a world as broken as theirs. Amara brushed aside the snow melting in her hair. 20 years old, once known for her laughter echoing through the summer hills, she now stood as the backbone of what was left of her family. Their parents had never returned from a supply convoy ambushed months earlier. Some days, grief gnawed at her like a starving wolf. Other days, she felt too numb to mourn. A knock sounded at the door. When she opened it, a burst of icy wind swept inside, and so did old Merrick, the local messenger. "You'll want to see this," he croaked, handing Amara a folded notice stamped with a crest she feared. Her heart sank before she even read it. Mandatory evacuation for capable citizens to assist war efforts. Her hands trembled. They wanted villagers taken deeper into military zones. Forced labor. Separation. "No," Amara whispered. "Not him. He is just a child." Merrick sighed, snow clinging to his beard. "I'm sorry, Amara. The war spares no one." Back at the front, the wind began to howl harder. The barbed wire trembled like the strings of a cursed instrument. Elias tightened the collar of his coat. "You ever think about what you'll do after this is all over?" Silas asked, kicking snow off his boots. "After?" Elias echoed as if the word belonged to fairy tales. "Yes, after," Silas insisted. "Imagine sunlight that actually warms your face. Bread that doesn't taste like feet. Maybe a life without hearing bombs in your sleep." Elias chuckled quietly. "I'd like to go home. Fix my grandfather's old watch. Plant apple trees again. See?" Silas elbowed him. "That's a future. Keep thinking about it." Elias wanted to, he truly did. But every soldier learned the same terrible truth. Dreams made you vulnerable. Just as he opened his mouth to respond, a loud crack echoed across the cratered land. A sniper shot. Close. Down. Silas yelled, pushing Elias against the trench wall. Snow burst upward near their heads as a second bullet struck. The brief calm shattered like glass. "All units," came the commander's distant yell. "Incoming assault, prepare for defense." The howl of the wind was drowned by the rattling death song of machine guns. Elias gripped his rifle, pulse pounding, breath turning to fire in his chest. The war had awakened again. In Branover, bells rang through the village square, each tolling a warning. Soldiers marched in, boots crunching on ice, commanding villagers into lines. Children clung to their mothers. Horses snorted clouds into the frozen air. Amara held Miran close. Her heart beat like a trapped bird. A stern officer pointed a gloved finger. "That one. Bring him." Two soldiers stepped forward, toward Miran. "No." Amara cried, stepping in front of him. "He's too young." "Orders are orders," the officer said flatly. Amara's breath shook like fragile glass. "Take me instead." The officer studied her, frostbitten cheeks, desperate eyes. Finally he nodded. "Very well. You volunteer." Miran sobbed, clutching her coat. "Amara, please don't leave me." She hugged him tightly. "I will come back. You must be strong until then. Promise me." He nodded through tears, though his promise was carved from fear. As soldiers led her away, she looked back once more. Miran's thin form, alone against the winter, burned into her memory. Night fell upon the trenches like a wolf's shadow. Shells screamed overhead. Men shouted in languages each other barely understood, united only by terror. Flares lit the sky with sickly green flickers, revealing ghost-like figures charging over no man's land. Elias barely had time to aim, targets blurred by falling snow. He fired, shoulders aching, ears ringing from artillery thunders. Silas beside him shouted, "Left flank! They're pushing through." The enemy was relentless, starving, freezing, desperate like everyone else. The blizzard did not care whose side anyone was on. A grenade rolled into the trench. Silas saw it first. "Move." He shoved Elias away and leapt toward the grenade. A flash, an eruption of fire, snow burst like a wave. Elias crashed into the icy wall, ears screaming with silence. When he scrambled back, Silas lay barely conscious, blood blooming on the white ground like a poisoned flower. "No, no, no," Elias hissed, dragging him deeper into cover. "Stay with me." Silas wheezed a laugh that was half a sob. "If you cry, I'll haunt you." Elias pressed cloth to the wound, panic tightening his chest. Around them, the battlefield devoured more lives. Above the chaos, Elias noticed something. The artillery had stopped. Not victory. A storm. Wind roared so violently it nearly ripped helmets away. The snow fell heavier, blinding anyone who dared lift their head. Cries and gunfire faded into muffled echoes. Nature had decided to pause the war, only to strike both sides equally. Elias gripped Silas's hand as freezing darkness swallowed them. Amar's journey to the military work camp was no less brutal. Packed inside a wagon with other taken villagers, she shivered beneath a thin coat. The road was rough, shaking exhaustion into her bones. "Where do you think they're taking us?" a frightened woman asked beside her. "To repair supply lines, maybe dig trenches," another replied, voice cracked like old wood. "We're cheap labor." Amara thought only of Miran's empty home. She held her brother's scarf, still warm with his scent, against her chest. "I must survive. I must return to him." The wagon wheels struggled over frozen terrain. Distant explosions painted fear in every passenger's eyes. War was closing in from every direction. Hours later, in the heart of the storm, the battlefield fell eerily still. Elias blinked open eyes heavy as iron. Snow blanketed the trench, burying weapons and bodies alike. The cold gnawed deeper now, teeth sinking into bone. He checked Silas, still alive but fading. "Hold on," Elias murmured. "I'll find help." but help felt like a myth. Through the blizzard, a faint sound drifted, soft singing. Not a soldier. A woman's voice, fragile, trembling but pure. Elias climbed from the trench, knees weak, and followed the ghostly melody. Snow stung his eyes as he stumbled forward. He found her beneath a broken tree, Amara, huddled in her coat, lips blue, a lantern at her feet flickering weakly. Their worlds collided by chance, or fate. She startled when she saw him. He raised his hand slowly, non-threatening. "I'm not here to harm you," Elias said, breath harsh. "My friend, he's dying. I need help." Amara hesitated. She had no weapons, no power, except compassion she could not abandon. "Take me to him," she said firmly. Elias guided her back. When she saw Silas, she knelt and immediately began tending to him, ripping fabric from her own clothing to bind his wound tighter. "You shouldn't be here," Elias whispered. Amara's eyes lifted to his, strong, unbroken. "Neither should you." For a moment, the war faded, and they were simply humans struggling against the cold. The storm eventually calmed, reducing its fury to a cruel quiet. Elias, Amara, and Silas were now trapped far behind enemy lines, with no clear path back. Their breaths hovered together like three fragile spirits in the frozen dark. Silas opened his eyes faintly. "Who's the angel? Did I die?" Amara smiled weakly. "Not yet. Now don't make that effort go to waste." Elias wrapped his coat around Silas and looked at Amara with gratitude he didn't have words for. "Thank you. What's your name?" "Amara," she answered softly. "And you?" "Elias." A strange peace settled between them. They were strangers, yet connected by the same silent wish. To live. Far away, Miran stared at the night sky from his freezing home, clutching the blanket Amara had given him. He whispered a fragile prayer. "Bring her back to me." The wind carried his hope like a feather through the snow, searching for her. Snowflakes fell gently again. But this calm was only the breath before another storm. And whispers beneath the frosted trenches promised that the worst, and the most important, part of their story was yet to come. The storm had raged through the night like a beast hungry for warmth. Now it had grown silent, too silent. Snow lay deep across the no man's land, erasing footprints, burying trenches, and filling shell craters until everything looked deceptively peaceful. A white graveyard under a morning sky. Elias Novak slowly opened his eyes, his eyelashes crusted with frost. His body ached as though the cold had hammered him into the earth. For a moment, he feared he might have lost his hearing, but then the soft groans of Silas Carter assured him he was still alive. Amara Bukova knelt beside them, her cheeks pale from frostbite and exhaustion. She had taken almost no sleep through the night, too afraid that the wounded soldier would slip away if she dared close her eyes. "Drink," she whispered to Silas, lifting a flask to his cracked lips. Melted snow, barely above freezing, but it was the only water they had. Silas swallowed weakly. "Tastes like heaven," he croaked, attempting a grin. "You're very dramatic for someone who almost died," Amara replied, struggling not to smile. Elias scanned the landscape. The trenches, both friend and foe, were hidden beneath white drifts. There was no telling where their lines ended, or where the enemies began. "We need shelter," he said. "And help." Amara stood slowly, her muscles stiff. "There's an abandoned hunting cabin not far from here. If we can reach it." A distant gunshot cracked the air. Elias grabbed his rifle and crouched low, heart pounding. The sound faded into the cold horizon. "They're looking for survivors," he murmured. Amara's face tightened with fear. "We have to move. Now." Silas was barely conscious as Elias hoisted him up, one arm over his shoulders. Snow dragged at their feet like quicksand, every step a battle against numbness and gravity. Amara led them ahead, watching the tree lean for movement. "What's your story, Amara?" Elias asked between breaths. Small talk felt absurd in a war zone, yet necessary, like reminding the universe they were still human. "I'm from Branover," she replied softly. "I was taken to be forced labor." She hesitated, then added, "I have a younger brother. Miran. He's alone now." Elias felt a pang in his chest sharper than the cold. "I'm sorry." Amara nodded, eyes fixed forward. Sorry didn't change anything, but it meant someone cared. Silas tried to lighten the mood. "If we make it out of this, I'll bake you a loaf of bread so good you'll forget this cold ever existed." "You can bake?" Elias asked, surprised. "No," Silas smirked, "but I'll learn." Amara laughed quietly, one brief moment untouched by war. They trudged deeper into the woods. Trees bent under the weight of snow, branches snapping like brittle bones. Every sound felt magnified in the frozen silence. Just when Elias began to fear they were lost, Amara pointed through the trees. There. A small cabin, half buried in snow, its roof sagging beneath winter's cruelty. But smoke once rose from that chimney, long ago. Shelter was shelter. They hurried toward it. The cabin. Inside, the air was stale but not unbearable. Dust-covered furniture, a table, a fireplace stuffed with ashes, an old fur coat hanging from a rusted hook. Amara quickly gathered firewood from a small pile and set to work. Her hands moved with practiced skill. Soon, flames flickered, lifting shadows from the walls and thawing their frozen bones. Elias laid Silas onto a thin mattress. The wounded soldier's breathing eased slightly with heat returning to his body. "You're good at this," Elias said, watching Amara tend the wound again. "My mother taught me," she replied, not looking up. "She said there's always someone who needs help. Even when the world is hurting." Elias stared into the fire, thinking of his grandfather's orchard, how apple blossoms bloomed despite winter's promise of return. He missed that simplicity, earth, seasons, time healing everything. He wondered if time still had that strength. Hours passed. Snow continued falling outside, muting all sound. Elias listened, fearing the sudden crack of footsteps or orders shouted in another language. War had a way of finding the living. But for a moment, safety existed. Silas finally slept peacefully. Amara leaned against the wall, exhaustion pulling her eyelids down. "You should rest," Elias said softly. "And you should sit," she countered, noticing he was still standing guard, gripping his rifle. He shook his head. "Not until I'm certain we weren't followed." Amara's voice softened. "You don't have to carry everything alone, Elias." He didn't reply. Maybe he didn't know how. The enemy in the snow. Late afternoon turned the world outside into icy blue shadows. Elias stepped out briefly, rifle raised, scanning through the trees. He saw nothing, no tracks, no movement. But absence didn't equal safety. When he returned inside, Amara was boiling snow in a tin pot. Silas stirred awake, sighing in pain. "How's the leg?" Elias asked. "I've had worse hangovers," Silas wheezed. "But at least those came with beer." Amara rolled her eyes. "You're impossible." "That's how I'm still alive," he replied weakly. Just then, a distant crunch of boots on snow made Elias freeze mid-step. Amara heard it too. Silas's expression hardened. "That's not Santa Claus." Elias put out the fire with his gloved hand, plunging the cabin into darkness except for faint winter light. He motioned for silence. Amara pressed a hand over her mouth, heart hammering. Outside, voices. Speaking a language Elias recognized as enemy. 3 figures emerged near the cabin, rifles in hand, scanning the forest. Elias whispered, "Stay down. Don't move." Silas gripped his pistol despite shaking hands. The door handle rattled. Snow fell from the roof as one soldier pushed against it. Another circled around back. Elias cocked his rifle silently, finger trembling but ready. Amara clutched the scarf Miran had given her. She closed her eyes and prayed. Time stretched thin. Then, distant gunfire echoed through the forest, and a commanding shout sent the soldiers running away from the cabin. A sudden attack elsewhere had pulled them away. Silence returned, sharp and suffocating. Amara's breath trembled out of her. Silas let his pistol fall to his chest. Elias lowered his gun slowly. "That was close," he whispered. "Too close," Silas muttered. Amara wiped tears she didn't remember shedding. "We can't stay here long." She was right. Night returned with a vengeance. The wind scratched the walls, impatient. Snow piled thicker, threatening to bury the cabin completely. "We need to move at first light," Elias said. "Either try to reach my unit, or get you back to Branover." Amara's face darkened. "They will take me again. And Miran. I don't know if he's safe now." Silas looked between them. "Let's join the army instead. They've got food, medics, warm beds." Elias cut him off. "Not warm. And not safe." Silas laughed weakly. "True. But warmer and safer than being hunted." Amara hugged her knees. "I just want to see my brother again." Elias looked into the flames. "We'll find him." She turned her head sharply. "You don't know that." "No," Elias admitted. "But I will try." Something changed in her eyes, like a crack letting in light. Silas coughed, breaking the moment. "Well, if we're on a mission to rescue a kid in the middle of a war, I suppose I'd better not die." Elias smiled. "Yes. Preferably not. Miran's night." Meanwhile, in Branover, Miran sat near a window, wrapped in blankets, watching snow fall like silent feathers. The world looked peaceful, but his chest ached with loss. Old Merrick sat beside him, pouring thin soup into 2 bowls. "She's strong," Merrick murmured, as if reading his fear. "Your sister is the daughter of warriors. She'll find her way." Miran nodded, but tears betrayed him. He whispered to the glass, "Come home soon, Amara." Outside, unseen in the dark, soldiers patrolled, boots crunching, rifles loaded. Branover was no longer a home. It was a checkpoint. And danger was growing like frost across the windows. The walk into uncertainty. Dawn broke, gray and weary. Elias helped Silas stand, wrapping his coat tight around him. Amara packed what little they had, the fur coat, a small kettle, a half-frozen loaf Elias had found hidden behind a shelf. She paused at the doorway, staring out at the endless white. "Which way?" Elias pointed southeast. "Toward the old rail line. If we follow it, we might reach friendly forces, or Branover." Silas shrugged. "At this point, I'll take either." They set off slowly, Silas leaning heavily on Elias. Amara led again, scanning every shadow. Her steps were unsure but determined. Hours passed. The cold gnawed deeper. Each footstep sank into snow as if the land resisted their survival. Then, Elias halted. Tracks. Fresh footprints. Many. Heading the same direction they were. "Patrol?" Amara asked. "Or prisoners," Silas muttered grimly. They pressed on carefully. The tracks led through a narrow ravine between tall ridges of snow. Suddenly, shouting, Elias pushed them behind a cluster of rocks. Amara peered over. A group of villagers, men, women, children, were being forced forward by soldiers. Shackles on wrists. Barely clothed for winter. One stumbled, collapsing into the snow. A soldier kicked him brutally until he wheezed upright. Amara gasped softly. Among them, Miran. His small body trembled as he tried to keep up, tears frozen on his cheeks. Amara's entire being shattered. She nearly rose to run to him, but Elias grabbed her arm. "No," he hissed. "You'll get him killed." She shook, torn between instinct and terror. Silas gripped her other hand. "We'll save him. But not like this." The column disappeared behind a hill. Amara's cry was silent, but it tore Elias apart. The plan. Elias's mind raced. We follow them. Wait for night. Then we strike. Silas frowned. I don't know if my leg agrees with that plan. Amara knelt in front of him, eyes blazing with desperate resolve. You don't have to fight. Just help us survive. Silas chuckled painfully. That, I can manage. Elias looked over the path again. They're heading toward the rail line. There must be a prisoner transport nearby. Amara clenched her fists. They won't take Miran. Not again. Elias nodded. We fight on our terms. The three of them, broken but unyielding, stepped forward into the snow, following the footprints of cruelty and hope alike. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying stories of every life crushed beneath war. Yet somewhere within those whispers, the promise of resistance stirred. Not every battle was fought for nations. Some were fought for one beating heart in the cold. The frost had grown sharper, like invisible teeth gnawing against every inch of exposed skin. The third week of February arrived carrying gusts so brutal that even the trenches, once a grim shelter from bullets, now felt like ice-carved coffins. Snow didn't fall softly anymore, it drove sideways in relentless waves, stinging like sand. Corporal Elias Keller stirred awake to the sound of boots crunching above him. He had barely slept, just enough to forget where he was before remembering again, violently. The dim lantern hanging above flickered as icy wind forced its way through cracks in the wooden support beams. Snowstorm's getting worse, murmured Private Tomash, his voice trembling either from cold or fear, it was impossible to tell which. They say the river froze overnight. Whole thing turned to ice. Elias sat up, rubbing life back into his hands. Frost had crept inside his gloves during the night. If it freezes solid, he said, that means the front line gets closer. No water between us and them. No barrier. No excuse. No mercy. A fresh round of thunderous artillery boomed from the distance. The frozen ground trembled. Icicles clattered loose from the trench walls and shattered at Elias' feet like glass. Recon patrol in 10 minutes, shouted Sergeant Weber from outside. Tomash groaned. Why send anyone out in this? The enemy can't see us. We can't see them. Elias pushed himself to his feet. Orders are orders. But he didn't say what he truly feared. The blizzard was the perfect cover for someone, or something, moving unseen. The nearby village of Saint Marceau suffered differently. Snow had swallowed every rooftop until the streets looked like a labyrinth of mounds. Wind whistled through broken church windows, and each gust sounded like the cry of a starving child. Inside the small bakery basement, Clara Moreau rubbed warmth into her mother's numbed fingers. The walls were thick stone, usually a blessing, but now they trapped cold air like a cellar for ghosts. We'll find more wood, Clara promised. Before nightfall. Her mother tried to smile. You always take care of me. The voice was frail, cracked like a dried leaf. Clara's little brother, Leo, peeked from beneath threadbare blankets. Did you hear it again last night? He whispered. Hear what? Clara asked gently. He pointed upward, to the floor above where their bakery ovens once glowed with sweet warmth. The footsteps. Clara stiffened. There were soldiers around, sometimes scavengers, but no one walked on the bakery floor at night. Not since the ceiling collapsed and snow claimed the upper rooms. She hugged him tighter. Just the wind, mon petit. Storms make the world sound alive. Leo shook his head. It wasn't the wind. It sounded like someone crying. Before Clara could respond, a knock jolted all three of them. 3 slow taps. Knock. 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 Clara grabbed a rusted shovel, her only weapon, and approached the door. Her heart pounded like a drum trying to break free of her chest. Another knock. Please, whispered a voice from outside. Help me. Clara hesitated only a moment, then unlatched the door. A soldier collapsed into her arms, half buried in snow, uniform coated in frost. His eyes fluttered like a candle losing its flame. "Water," he rasped. Leo rushed forward with a tin cup of melted ice. Clara guided the man to the ground, stripping away his frozen gloves. She recognized him immediately. Corporal Elias Keller. Hours earlier, Elias trudged through the storm with 2 other soldiers. Weber led the way, his silhouette only a dark shape fighting through swirling white. Tomasz struggled behind, coughing into his scarf. "We should turn back," Tomasz shouted over the wind. "We can't see anything." Suddenly, gunfire. A single shot cracked through the storm. Weber fell. Elias dove into the snow, searching for the shooter. But no enemy emerged. No muzzle flash. No sound except the blizzard roaring. Then Tomasz screamed. Elias turned, but Tomasz was simply gone. White swallowed him whole. "Tom!" Elias bellowed, voice snatched by wind. He crawled forward, fingers clawing through snow. Nothing. Not even footprints. As if the earth itself had devoured him. Elias sprinted blindly, heart hammering like artillery. His vision darkened. His body began to slow, not from fear, but cold. The kind that steals strength and replaces thoughts with dreams of warmth. He fell. Snow buried his face. He thought of music halls in Berlin. Of sunshine. Of his little sister's laughter. He accepted sleep. Then a door had opened. Warmth. Voices. Clara's voice. Elias awakened to torchlight flickering across a stone ceiling. He was wrapped in blankets, threadbare, but heavenly after the cold. A small fire crackled in a metal bucket. Clara sat beside him, cautious yet curious. "You're lucky we heard you," she said softly. "Most who collapse in a storm never rise again." Elias' throat felt like sand. "Thank you," he whispered. "Your kindness. I won't forget it." Leo leaned forward. "Did you see the ghosts? The ones that walk in the snow?" Clara's eyes widened. "Ghosts?" The boy nodded firmly. "They're calling for people. Taking them away." Elias swallowed hard. He remembered Tomasz's scream, how he vanished without a trace. "No ghosts," he forced a smile, trying to calm Leo. "Just enemies and storms." But Clara noticed the fear in his eyes. He didn't believe his own words. Outside, ice crunched under approaching footsteps. But this time, no one knocked. Clara, Elias, and Leo froze in place. Something, or someone, dragged across the snow above them. Slow. Heavy. A voice floated through the storm, muffled yet distinct. "Help, please, it's cold." Leo whimpered, burying his face in Clara's sleeve. Elias reached for his rifle, jaw clenched. The voice came again, closer. "Open the door, it's Tomasz." "Elias, help me." Elias' blood ran colder than the winter itself. That voice was wrong, too flat, too hollow, like a record spinning at the wrong speed. Clara whispered, "Do not open that door." Elias nodded, tightening his grip on his weapon. Above them, footsteps stopped. Silence. Then something scraped slowly across the door. Nails? Metal? Teeth? Elias held his breath. A chilling whisper seeped through the cracks. "We see you." Hours passed. The storm finally began to ease, leaving a suffocating stillness. Elias tried to rest, though his eyes refused to stay shut. Clara sat nearby, her silhouette outlined by ember glow. He studied her quietly. She looked exhausted yet unbreakable. Stronger than many soldiers he knew. "You saved me," he said. "Why?" "I wore the uniform of the side that destroyed your home." Clara looked away. "War steals everything. If we forget mercy, it finishes what it started." Elias felt her words sink deep, like thawing warmth in a frozen heart. He hesitated, then asked, "Those footsteps Leo mentioned, how long has that been happening?" Clara answered carefully. "Since the worst of the winter began. People disappearing in the snow. Sometimes we hear voices. Sometimes scratching. Always at night." Elias shivered. There must be survivors out there, lost, desperate. Clara's expression said she wished she believed that. Instead, she whispered. "Some who vanished, we later found them." "Found them how?" Clara inhaled shakily. "Frozen solid. Kneeling, as if praying. Faces twisted as though they saw something terrible right before the end." Elias looked toward the door. What if Tomasz was still out there? What if he wasn't alone? Just before dawn, the wind rose again. A new set of footsteps approached, lighter, quicker, then urgent banging shook the door. "Let me in. Please," cried a woman's voice. Clara ran forward. "Mother!" Elias stood quickly. "Wait." But Clara had already unlatched the door. The blast of cold hit like a fist. Clara's mother stumbled inside, frantic, shaking violently. Her eyes were wide with terror. Not fear of the cold, but fear of something she had seen. "Maman!" Clara hugged her tightly. Her mother grabbed Elias' arm, nails digging through his uniform. "Don't go outside," she gasped. "It's not the snow that kills." Elias' heart began to pound again. "What is out there? What did you see?" Clara's mother stared at the door, voice barely a breath. "There are whispers in the frost." Elias looked sharply at Clara. She nodded. "They come for the living." Outside, the wind howled, but beneath it, faint and unmistakable. Whispers. Calling names. Begging for warmth. Promising safety. Elias stepped back, rifle ready. Leo clung to Clara as though she were the only thing keeping him from being pulled away by the voices. The storm might end. But the nightmare was only beginning. Morning tried to push its way through the clouds, but sunlight had become a memory in this frozen part of Europe. A weak haze spilled across Saint Marceau, casting long shadows that seemed darker than the daylight deserved. Snow marked every surface like a quiet graveyard. Elias sat by the dying fire, rotating his cold hands over the heat. The warmth helped, but only barely. Clara's mother rested under blankets, drifting in and out of shallow sleep. Leo sat close, sketching shapes in dirt on the floor with a broken piece of charcoal, a boy trying to hold on to childhood while the war ripped it away. Clara prepared what little food they had left, stale bread softened in melted snow. They saved the last potatoes for her mother, whose condition had worsened overnight. Elias tried to rise, but dizziness hit him like a blow. Clara steadied him. "You need rest," she insisted. "I have to report back to my unit," Elias argued softly, though he wasn't sure why. The thought of stepping outside again made his blood freeze. Clara's eyes, tired but determined, looked into his. "If those things are still out there, your unit may already be gone." Elias didn't try to deny it. From the bakery window, he watched the storm's damage. Trees bent grotesquely toward the ground, some split in half by the cold. The church bell tower loomed above the village, a spine of stone jutting into the bleak sky. But no bell rang anymore. The ropes had frozen. The silence felt unnatural. Then Clara noticed it too. "Do you hear that?" Elias strained his ears. Nothing. Absolute nothing. No birds. No wind. No cracking ice. It was the loudest silence he had ever known. Later that afternoon, the stillness broke. The faint hum of an engine carried through the frozen air. Elias rushed outside, Clara right behind him, boots sinking deep into powdery snow. A dark military truck approached slowly, tires wrapped in chains, the engine groaning from the weight of winter. The Red Cross symbol, faded but visible, was painted on the side. Relief surged in Clara's chest. Reinforcements. Medicine. News. Two soldiers climbed out. Lieutenant Richter and a field doctor named Dr. Hahn. They looked exhausted, uniforms stiff with ice. Is anyone injured? Dr. Hahn asked quickly. Clara motioned inside. My mother. She is very weak. Dr. Hahn nodded and went in, medical bag slung over his shoulder. Lieutenant Richter turned to Elias. Corporal Keller. We thought you were lost. Elias swallowed. Almost was. Patrol team? Richter asked. Elias shook his head slowly. Gone. Weber was shot. Tomasz disappeared. Richter's jaw tightened. We suspected something like this. Men have been vanishing all along the line. Elias frowned. Enemy soldiers? Richter hesitated before answering. We're not sure. Clara's eyes widened. What do you mean? Instead of an answer, Richter motioned them inside. Dr. Hahn checked Clara's mother, speaking as he worked. Frost sickness and malnutrition. She needs warmth, food, rest, and a safer place than this frozen tomb. Clara looked desperate. We have nowhere else. Richter stepped forward. There is a supply bunker east of here. Heated stoves, medicine, protection. We're gathering survivors and soldiers there. Elias considered it. It sounded like hope. But then Dr. Hahn muttered, we must leave before nightfall. Clara stiffened. Because of the whispers. Both soldiers froze. Richter exchanged a look with Hahn, an unspoken confirmation. Elias felt a chill deeper than the cold. What do you know about them? Richter lowered his voice. They started near the northern fronts. At first, we thought frostbite drove men insane. They wandered out into the snow claiming they heard voices, dead comrades calling to them. Leo's pencil fell from his tiny, shaking fingers. Hahn continued, we found some of those men. Kneeling. Frozen. And not like normal corpses. He looked toward Clara's mother to ensure she wasn't listening. Their eyes were missing. As if taken by the cold itself. Clara covered her mouth in horror. Elias whispered, Tomasz's voice, called my name last night. Richter placed a hand on his shoulder. That was not your friend. The skies darkened early, too early. Night approached like a predator. The group prepared quickly. Blankets, a small sack of food, medical supplies. Clara helped her mother stand, though every movement made the older woman wince. Leo, Clara said, tightening his scarf, stay beside me. Always. I will, he whispered, though his fear made him cling to Elias instead. Elias didn't mind. They stepped outside. Wind returned, soft at first, then sharper, like whispers brushing against their ears. Elias scanned the tree line. The world was white and still. Richter and Hahn led them toward the truck. If we hurry, we'll make the bunker before the storm. A voice cut him off. Weak, trembling, and familiar. Elias, help me. Elias froze. His body moved before his mind agreed. There, near a fallen wall, stood Tomasz. Or what remained of him. His skin was pale as frost. His uniform torn, soaked in frozen blood. One of his boots was missing, his bare foot buried in snow without pain. His eyes weren't there. Just hollow pits filled with swirling frost. Clara gasped. Leo screamed and buried his face into Elias's coat. Tomasz's jaw trembled, but not from cold. From something puppeteering him from the inside. Come home. Elias. Elias aimed trembling hands on his rifle. I'm sorry, he whispered, voice cracking. Tomasz took one step closer, snow crunching like bone snapping. Richter's shout cut the air, he's not alive. Fire. Gunshots erupted. Tomasz collapsed into the snow, motionless. The whispering stopped instantly. Silence rushed back, heavy and watching. Elias stood frozen, tears stinging his eyes. He had lost Tomasz twice in one night. Clara took his hand. He didn't pull away. They hurried into the truck, slamming doors shut. The engine rumbled, wheels struggling against layers of snow. Trees blurred into streaks of white and gray. But outside, just beyond the glass, figures appeared. Kneeling. Staring without eyes. Listening. Elias heard faint voices, almost beneath thought. We are cold. We are hungry. We are coming. Clara's mother shivered violently. Her lips moved soundlessly, prayer or fear or both. Clara squeezed her hand. Hold on, Maman. We're almost safe. But the storm ahead thickened into a living wall of white. The whispers grew louder. Richter yelled over the engine, if we stop, they'll surround us. The truck jerked violently. They weren't alone on the road anymore. Shapes in the snow, hundreds, moving with impossible speed. Clawing toward the truck. Elias chambered another round. Leo covered his ears. Clara braced herself for impact. The storm swallowed the road. Then, crash. Everything flipped into darkness. The world spun. Metal shrieked. Glass shattered. When Elias opened his eyes, everything was upside down. Snow drifted into the overturned truck. Richter lay unconscious, blood trickling from his scalp. Han struggled to move, pinned by debris. Clara was already unbuckled, trying to free Leo and her mother. Outside the wreck, Elias heard footsteps. Slow. Crunching. Growing closer. Faden whispers curled through the broken windows. Let us in. So cold, help us. We miss you. Clara's shaking voice cut the air. Elias, they're surrounding us. He grabbed his rifle. The frost outside moved like a living tide. They were trapped. And night had just begun. Darkness pressed in from all sides. The overturned truck groaned under the weight of snow piling atop it. Wind howled through jagged openings like the cries of ghosts. Elias forced himself to move, ignoring the pain radiating from his shoulder. He kicked aside loose crates until he could crawl out through a shattered window. The moment he emerged, the cold bit into his skin with razor teeth. Around him, white. Endless white. The forest was a graveyard of frozen trees, hunched over as if cowering from the night. Clara crawled out next, pulling Leo close as they stumbled into the blizzard. Her mother moaned weakly inside the truck. Richter was still unconscious, blood covering his temple. Dr. Han struggled but managed to free himself from the wreckage. We have to move, Han gasped. Before they... A sound cut him off. Footsteps. Not one. Not two. Dozens. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Slow, steady, organized. Elias grabbed his rifle and spun around. Shadows walked toward them, figures in torn uniforms, stumbling awkwardly as though learning how to use their bodies again. One voice rose above the wind. We are so cold. Leo sobbed. Make them go away. Clara pulled him closer. Don't look at them. Richter finally stirred, groaning in pain. Elias dragged him upright. We can't fight them all, Elias said. Richter coughed blood but managed to nod. Bunker, 3 kilometers east, go. The doctor slung Clara's mother over his shoulder, trembling with effort. They started moving, staggering in the direction Richter pointed. Behind them, the dead followed. Not running, just walking. Always walking. The blizzard thickened until the world shrank to a tunnel of gray around them. Elias kept his rifle raised, though frost already formed around the trigger. His boots sank deep into snow, stealing strength from every step. How much farther? Clara asked, voice breaking. Richter pointed to a dark shape emerging from the white haze. A tall fence, barbed wire glinting with ice. The supply bunker, Richter breathed. We're close. But dread replaced their relief. The gates had been torn open. Metal twisted outward like claws. Elias's heart plunged. Was this an attack? Han shook his head. No. Something from inside forced its way out. Leo squeezed Clara's hand so hard she winced. But she held him tighter, shielding his face from the scenes ahead. Bodies lay scattered near the entrance. Some soldiers still clutched rifles frozen to their hands. Others knelt in snow, unmoving, eyes missing. They got here first, Richter whispered. Elias took the lead, forcing himself forward even as his body screamed to run away. The bunker doors hung open, dim yellow light flickering inside. They stepped in. Heat struck them immediately, thick, stale, suffocating. The bunker's interior was intact, lights buzzing, stoves running, but food and medical supplies were scattered everywhere. Tables overturned. Footprints zigzagged wildly across the concrete floor. Richter closed the steel door and sealed the locks. A moment later, thud thud thud, something heavy hit the other side. The whispers crawled through the walls. Let us in, it's warm, so warm. Leo whimpered. Don't open the door. Please. We won't, Clara promised. Elias guided her to a bench, helping her mother lie down. Dr. Han immediately began treatment, injecting thawed medicine and checking her pulse. Richter limped toward the command table, searching through scattered papers. Someone triggered an evacuation protocol, he muttered. But the radio's dead. No response. Elias approached another corridor lined with dorm rooms. The doors were locked, except one. He pushed it open, rifle ready. Inside, bunk beds and personal belongings remained untouched, as if their owners evaporated. A single lantern flickered beside a crumpled diary. Elias picked it up, hands shaking as he read the final entry. They are beneath the snow. Breathing. Listening. Waiting for us to sleep. Captain Marceau was right, the cold remembers. He hears them calling. They want warmth. Our warmth. If anyone finds this, don't stay here overnight. Elias felt his heartbeat surge painfully. He slammed the diary shut. Too late. Night had already claimed the sky above. Dr. Han finished tending to Clara's mother. She's stabilizing, he said with a tired smile. The warmth is helping. Clara's relief was brief. The bunker lights flickered ominously. We can't stay long, Elias said, handing the diary to Richter. The lieutenant read silently, then cursed under his breath. I knew these reports were real. Command dismissed it as superstition, cold hallucinations. He slammed his fist on the table. We should never have been sent here. Clara looked between them. What exactly are we facing out there? They look like the dead, but they move. They speak. Richter steadied himself. War changes the living, but winter changes the dead. Clara shivered, not from cold. Elias added softly, they're drawn to warmth. They feel hunger. Leo's voice trembled. What do they want to eat? Silence. Then Clara answered for Elias. Us. Time passed. The whispering never stopped. Sometimes they heard scratching along the outer walls. Sometimes the heavy breathing of something pressing against vents. Sometimes a voice, a familiar voice, echoed down the hallway. Tomasz. Elias flinched every time. Leo huddled near Clara's mother, clutching her frail hand as if it kept him tethered to sanity. We need a plan, Elias said. A real destination. Richter pointed to a map pinned to the wall. There's a refugee train station 30 kilometers south. If it's still operational, we might evacuate. Han frowned. Then we need fuel. The truck is useless. Snow is too deep to walk that far. Elias scanned the room and saw salvation. Snowmobiles. 3 of them. Undamaged. Keys still in the ignition. Not enough for everyone to ride fully, but enough to pull a sled, for Clara's mother. Richter nodded approvingly. At first light, we move. Everyone silently agreed. Because staying meant death. Later, when the bunker fell quiet, Clara approached Elias. "You saved us," she whispered. Elias shook his head. "I lost so many before I ever reached you." Clara took his gloved hand gently. "You're here now. That's what matters to me." The warmth between them was fragile, but real. Then a loud clang from the ceiling vent shattered the moment. Thud. Silence. Thud thud. Metal bent inward. Bolts snapped. Richter shouted, "They're trying to get in." Elias aimed at the vent. With a sickening screech, the vent cover tore away. A hand plunged through, gray and stiff, fingers clawing desperately. More hands followed. Clara screamed as Leo pulled her behind him. Elias fired. The hand jerked back, black frost blood splattering the floor. Han yelled, "We must go. Now." Richter grabbed his pistol. "Snowmobiles. Move." Alarms blared. Lights pulsed red. The bunker had become a trap. They sprinted into the vehicle bay. Elias leaped onto a snowmobile, revving the engine. Richter secured Clara's mother onto a rescue sled attached behind. Schnee, the blizzard outside, roared as the hangar doors opened. Before them, the night. Behind them, hungry dead. The first snowmobile shot out. Clara held onto Elias, Leo clinging to her. Second snowmobile followed, Han steering, Richter covering the rear. Screams and whispers chased them into the storm. Elias shouted over the wind, "Hold on." The snow swallowed them whole. Far behind, the bunker lights blinked out. The storm consumed everything. No one dared look back. Because the whispering was getting louder. Night in the encampment never brought true darkness, not when the snow reflected every shard of light like broken mirrors scattered across the earth. Black trees stood like bones against the horizon, silent witnesses to the weight carried by every soldier and refugee who set foot on this frozen ground. Lysander stood near a makeshift fire, rubbing his gloved hands together. The flames barely held against the fierce wind, flickering so weakly that it felt like a cruel joke of warmth. Around him, the remaining villagers and soldiers huddled beneath patched blankets and canvas tents, their breaths rising like small ghosts into the air. "Are you warm enough?" Elara asked, settling beside him. Her voice was faint but gentle, a refuge of sound in a world that had forgotten comfort. He nodded, though his fingertips were numb, and the cold crept deeper every moment. Warm enough to stay awake. Her eyes traced the sky, moonless, heavy with storm clouds still waiting to break. "Do you ever wonder," she whispered, "how much colder the world can become before people give up?" He looked at her, noticing the frost clinging to the ends of her hair like silver thread. "People don't give up," he answered softly. "They endure. Just like this fire. Frail, but stubborn." A small laugh escaped her, one that shook slightly. Stubborn might be enough. They watched as a small boy, no older than 9, tried to play with a wooden toy soldier near the tents. Every now and then, he looked up toward the northern woods where the front lines still howled with distant thunder. His father was out there, fighting a battle he might never understand. Lysander thought of his own family, somewhere far beyond the horizon, perhaps searching for shelter, perhaps already swallowed by the frost. He refused to picture their faces frozen in despair. He stood, stepping toward the command post, a single table buried in maps and snow. Officers murmured quietly, their voices sharp with worry. The situation was clearer each day. The frost was winning. "Tonight, we move again," Captain Alistair declared. His beard was thick with ice, but his voice remained steady. "We reach the southern ravine by dawn. The ice storms there are severe, but it's our only path to safer ground." "What about the civilians?" Lysander asked. "They march with us," the captain replied. "Slowly, carefully. We protect them. We all survive, together." A chorus of weary nods followed. Strategies meant little when the enemy was no longer just soldiers, but the sky itself, a sky determined to bury them. As the officers dispersed, a soft tune floated through the air, a trembling thread of melody played on a battered violin. Lysander turned to find Alara holding the instrument, bow gliding gently across frozen strings. The music was like a lantern in the dark, fragile yet fiercely bright. Others gathered near, children first, then mothers, soldiers, and elders. They stood in a ring lit by low fires, shoulders pressed close, sharing what little warmth remained. Alara played a lullaby from her village, a song of spring, of fields glowing green and golden wheat dancing under soft sun. Some remembered the words, humming through chapped lips. Others simply listened, eyes glistening with memories they'd buried beneath fear. The melody lifted hearts that had forgotten how to beat without dread. A soldier, old and bent like the winter trees, began to sing. Though frost may claim the river's flow, and night devour the day, our hearts will keep the embers warm and guide us on our way. Voices joined, growing stronger. Even those who had sworn never to hope again found themselves carried by the chorus. For the first time since the village fell, children laughed. The sound cracked the icy silence like sunlight through storm clouds. Lysander closed his eyes, letting the warmth of the song seep into every starved corner of his soul. He felt his fear loosen its grip, not gone, never gone, but softer. Across the camp, the boy with the toy soldier approached him timidly. "Mr. Soldier," he said, holding out the small figure, carved from oak. "My papa gave this to me before he left. He said it will keep me safe. But, you protect us all the time. So maybe it should protect you too." Lysander knelt, touched by the gift. "No," he said gently, returning the toy to the boy's mittened hands. "It's your hope. And you must keep it safe until your father returns to take it back." The child smiled, small but real, the kind of smile that could thaw icebergs. Moonlight finally broke through the clouds, dim but present, glimmering on fresh snowflakes drifting down like feathers. Alara's song slowed into silence, and warmth lingered longer than it should have. "We leave at first light," Captain Alistair reminded them, though his voice carried less urgency and more admiration. "Rest while you can." Families curled beneath blankets and tarps, the fire cracking quietly like a heartbeat against the cold. Lysander walked a final patrol around the camp. The snow glowed soft blue beneath the newborn moon. He felt the weight of every soul asleep behind him, and a responsibility to carry them forward. Alara approached again, brushing frost from her violin. "When spring comes," she murmured, "let us find a place where children don't know what war sounds like." He looked toward the horizon, endless white and endless uncertainty. "We'll build it," he promised. "With whatever we have left." The wind howled, but softer than before. There, beneath the winter sky, hope refused to die. It flickered, just like the fire, too determined to be extinguished. Morning would bring hardship, another march, another battle for survival against cold and fear. But for now, they rested in the shelter of music, and the memory of spring. And that was enough. The first hint of dawn crept over the horizon like a shy visitor, brushing pale light across the frost-bitten camp. Snow continued to fall in soft whispers, covering footprints and memories alike. The world seemed fragile this morning, brittle, like the thin ice that formed on a river before it shattered beneath a careless step. Lysander packed his few belongings, a worn coat, a steel canteen half frozen inside, a small loaf of bread wrapped in cloth he'd saved from last night. He fastened his rifle over his shoulder, though he hoped today would not demand its use. Today, he wished the cold would be the only enemy. Alara approached with her violin case held close. "Captain says we move in 15 minutes, she said quietly. Lysander nodded. Her breath danced in the air before disappearing into the wind. "Are you ready?" he asked. "No," she replied honestly, a tremble in her voice, but strength in her gaze. "But I'll keep walking anyway." That had become the motto of their lives, keep walking anyway. The march south. The refugees formed a long line stretching across the frozen clearing. Soldiers flanked them on each side, alert for threats both human and nature-born. Children rode on carts pulled by weary horses, while elders leaned against makeshift canes carved from shattered fence posts. Lysander walked near the front, boots sinking into fresh snow. The air was so cold that every breath burned like fire swallowed too quickly. Captain Alistair's voice carried through the wind, "We move fast but steady. No one is left behind." The storm from last night had softened into a quiet snowfall, the sky seeming almost merciful for once. Yet everyone knew that mercy in winter was only borrowed, not given. Hours passed. The path grew narrow as they approached the cliffs that marked the edge of the southern ravine. Below lay a valley rumored to lead toward safer towns, ones with stocked shelters, working fires, and a promise of survival. "Careful here," Lysander warned, helping an elderly woman across a slick patch of ice. She gripped his arm with surprising strength for someone so thin. "Thank you, soldier," she murmured. "May spring find you soon." Echoes of war. As the sun lifted higher, muffled explosions rumbled in the distance, like mountains exhaling. The faint scent of gunpowder drifted through the wind. The front lines remained close. A child tugged Lysander's coat. "The same boy with the wooden soldier. Is the war coming here?" His voice quivered. "No," Lysander said, steady and sure, even though he didn't know. "We're walking away from it. Toward peace." The boy nodded, clutching his toy tightly. But then, a sound cut through the air sharp as steel, the crack of artillery far too close. The ground trembled. "Keep moving," Captain Alistair ordered. Soldiers formed a protective arc around the refugees, weapons drawn though none wanted to fire them. Shadows of enemy troops flickered between distant tree lines, but they did not advance. Perhaps they were just as devastated by the winter, too broken to fight. The storms had become the greatest defender of life. Crossing the ravine. By midday, they reached the bridge, if one could call it that. A narrow wooden passage stretched over a steep, icy ravine. Many planks had snapped under the cruelty of frost. Each step would be a risk. Lysander felt his heartbeat drum like a marching band inside his chest. One wrong move could send dozens falling into the abyss. Slowly, Captain Alistair instructed. One family at a time. Soldiers crossed first to secure the far side. Then came mothers, children, and the elderly. The bridge groaned like an animal in pain with every boot that touched it. Alara stepped forward when her turn came, violin held tightly as though it could protect her from gravity itself. Lysander reached for her hand. "Look at me, not the drop." She nodded, eyes locked on his. Together, they crossed the trembling planks. Snowflakes swirled around them like frantic moths. Halfway across, the wood beneath Alara's foot cracked loudly. She gasped, stumbling, but Lysander pulled her securely against his chest, guiding her forward. The group behind them froze in fear. "It's all right," he shouted, voice firm as granite. "Keep going." Finally, they reached the far side, breath shuddering with relief. One by one, the rest followed. The last stretch. Afternoon light faded into a bluish haze as clouds thickened again. The valley ahead stretched endless, icy fields dotted with bare trees and the faint outlines of ruined farmhouses. "We rest there," Captain Alistair said, pointing toward a cluster of structures sheltered by a hill. "Shelter for the night." The refugees' pace strengthened at the sight. As they approached, a warmth tingled in the air, faint but undeniable. Smoke rose from one cottage chimney. The sight alone brought tears to nearly every eye. "Someone is alive here," Alara breathed. Then a figure emerged from behind the largest barn, wrapped in a heavy wool cloak, fur hat shielding a face weathered by cold. He raised a hand in greeting. "Welcome," he called out. "You've come a long way." His voice carried kindness, rare currency in times of war. "We're not here to take what isn't ours," Captain Alistair assured. The man smiled faintly. "Hope is not something one can hoard. Come, share our fire." It was the first moment of unexpected generosity they had found in weeks. Inside the barn, villagers had built a roaring fire in a stone hearth. Warmth wrapped around the refugees like a forgotten embrace. Pots of soup simmered. Thick blankets lay folded in stacks. Children rushed to greet the newcomers with cautious curiosity. Lysander's knees almost buckled. "Feels like a dream," he whispered. Alara set her violin down gently, eyes bright. "A dream you don't want to wake from." Night of refuge. Stories were exchanged over steaming bowls, stories of lost homes, of journeys that nearly ended, of tiny miracles that pushed them forward. Laughter crept back into the world like a shy animal. Alara played her violin once more, not a song of sorrow this time, but one of hope. A lively tune that made feet tap and hearts beat faster. Some even danced, though their legs were stiff from miles of marching. The boy with the wooden soldier climbed onto Lysander's lap. "We made it," he said, voice glowing. "Yes," Lysander answered, smiling truly for the first time in ages. "We did." He looked around. Families reunited with warmth. Soldiers leaning back, exhaustion replaced with a fragile peace. Snow tapping on the roof like gentle applause from the heavens. For tonight, they were safe. A dawn that promised spring. Before sleeping, Lysander stepped outside into the star-filled night. The valley stretched below, quiet as a held breath. The horizon shimmered with the first hints of color, pink brushing the edge of darkness. Alara came to stand beside him. "Do you think this is the end of the road?" "No," he said. "I think it's the beginning of one." She leaned her head lightly against his shoulder. Together, they watched the stars begin to fade, chased away by light, not darkness. Tomorrow, they would plan where to go next. Tomorrow, they would rebuild what winter had tried to erase. But tonight, they stood on new ground, not just earth. Hope. The rising sun finally broke through the snow-cloud veil, illuminating a world still scarred, still cold, but undeniably alive. A world that had refused to give up. And under that newborn light, Lysander whispered a promise, to himself, to Alara, to every soul who survived beside him. The frost cannot stay forever. Spring will come. And we will be here to greet it.